Hi warriors, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm doing a bit of an impromptu Q&A. I asked you all via YouTube and Patreon to send in some questions. Obviously the Patreon ones got priority, but I've also selected a few of the YouTube questions that I will be answering today. So the questions I'll be covering, I haven't actually properly looked over them yet, but they're concerned with weight redistribution, bloating, gaining too much weight, as well as how to prevent relapse and measuring out meals. So if you're interested in any of these topics, then stay tuned and let's get to it. So the first question I received was from a patron who I've actually had a consultation with just 2 weeks ago, and it went really well. She did have a few more questions and she sent in the following. Did your parents try to refeed you all the time? So presenting you with nuts, observing your intake, etc. How did you deal with the situation without getting upset? I'm able to eat meals cooked by them as long as they're things I can measure. So a curry, a veggie stew, pasta, etc. where I can take a certain amount of both components. But when meals get more complex, like lasagna, noodles, things where things are already mixed up, I tend to restrict myself. Do you have any tips for how to be able to tolerate more without guilt or fear? Yeah, that is quite tricky, I guess. During my recovery, my parents definitely very closely watched what I was eating. It was measured out on the kitchen scales before I actually ate it, and I had to reach minimum amounts or otherwise they'd be very clearly disappointed, and I was just not ready for that. I disappointed them enough, so I felt like I really had to stick with these portions, and that put a lot of pressure on me. And it also meant that I could get quite irritated sometimes because I felt like I was constantly being watched. Not necessarily that I wasn't trusted, but that there was just a lot of pressure. And then especially for certain meals that sort of scared me more than others. That was terrifying and really difficult for me. But at the same time, I understand, because they're obviously really worried and they want to know that you're eating what you're supposed to be eating, that you're on the right track, and that you are recovering. So I try to take their perspective and try to put myself in their shoes and continue to eat without getting upset, or without getting upset as often. And that was really difficult, but I think is the only thing you can do. And over time they might see that you've got the right intentions, that you're eating what you're supposed to, and maybe some of that control, some of that observation might reduce a little bit as they're starting to trust you again. So the only thing really that I suggest in this situation is just to stick with it and understand where they're coming from, and just sort of have faith that this will progress over time, as will the fears themselves, because over time, when you face them more and more, they'll start to get less. So in terms of having different food combinations, that is the best test, really. The best test to face your fear foods. So have these meals frequently, plan them in. Go to a bakery and get a pastry where you have no idea what the calorie content is or the nutritional value, and challenge yourself in this way. In the short term, that might cause you some anxiety, but in the long term, it is so worth it to face your fear foods. Following on from this question, when you committed yourself into real recovery and ate at a restaurant, did you still have your normal snacks and meals, regardless of how big the portion was or how full you felt afterwards? Because listening to my body seems like something I'm not able to do at the moment. That is a really good question. Usually, yes, for me it was important to stick to my routine and to have my other snacks and stuff anyway, because I knew that if I got lax with that, I would just too easily tell myself that after a restaurant meal, it's fine not to have a snack, it's fine to reduce my dinner portion, etc., etc., and I would fall into the eating disorder trap way too easily. However, there's definitely times where I ate at a restaurant and portions were just really, really large, and I did take that into consideration a little bit, but yeah, as I said, it's a bit of a tricky situation. If you're unsure, then do discuss it with your parents or anyone else that can give you some external input, because as I said, it's just too easy just to listen to the eating disorder, alleviate the anxiety in the short term, but prevent those long-term gains that you want to have for your recovery. So the next question was sent in French. Comment répondre à la faim extrême quand on va à l'école et qu'on ne peut pas manger en classe? So how to respond to extreme hunger when you're going to school and you can't really respond to the extreme hunger because you're in lectures. That's a good question, because during my first year at university, I would say I was more or less recovered, but I did still experience some periods of quite intense hunger and a bit of a fight in terms of how to respond to that hunger. Just, I mean, figuring out university life. So yeah, it is a tricky one, but if you're in classes, especially in high school or before, this is definitely something you can bring up with your teachers. You can tell them that you have struggled with an eating disorder or are struggling with an eating disorder. And I have done that before, and they tend to be very happy that you bring up something like that, because then they understand your situation. For example, one time I had a lunchtime meeting. I didn't have time to have my lunch, and I asked my teacher if I could just quickly eat my lunch during the lesson, and although she would never have said yes to anyone else, she said that that was perfectly fine. But anyway, I'm assuming that most lessons are just an hour or maximum 2 hours long, so it tends to be quite easy to eat between lectures. Always make sure you have snacks on you, a bag of nuts, some biscuits, just things like that. I always take them to uni with me as well, so that between lectures or during lectures, because big lecture halls, it's fine now, I can have something to munch on, and I try to have a lunch break most days, so that I can actually properly just sit down, mindfully have my meal, and then continue working. So yeah, 2 questions down, 3 more to go. The next question is the following. Could you talk a little bit more about how not to fall back into old patterns, for example, when going back to university after the holidays? Definitely for me, when my routine was broken, that would be a big trigger, just to go back to the safety of my eating disorder, even though this safety was all just a myth. I would restrict again or cut out snacks, and that's the last thing you want to do. So when you break your routine, or if you move a different place, or if you're going back somewhere after a holiday, it's really important to try to maintain the routine that you had. Even though this may sound very controlling, for me it really helped to try to stick with the routine that I had that had proven to work, and from there you can then become a bit freer again and maybe start listening to your hunger cues if you're starting to get to that stage. But sticking with a routine that you know works, that won't cause you a massive amount of anxiety, might be a good thing to do during a time where everything else is non-routine. The next question is about weight redistribution. Can you explain your experience with weight redistribution in recovery? I find I have a massive tummy all the time, both excess weight and water retention. So I have several videos specifically on digestion, weight distribution, etc. But this is a question that does come up a lot, and it's a question that really troubled me during my recovery, because my tummy would be absolutely massive, and that wasn't just something that I saw, it's something that other people also saw. And in recovery, it's actually quite normal to be very bloated, but also to collect the initial weight around your stomach area, because that's where your vital organs are. Your body is trying to protect itself, and it's really, really clever. So yeah, especially after a meal, but also just in general, my belly would be disproportionately large compared to my skinny arms, my skinny legs, and I hated it. What I did at the time was to wear slightly baggier clothes, sweatpants, just to feel a bit more comfortable and also not draw my attention to my tummy, for example, by wearing tight t-shirts or anything like that. It is something that is only temporary, so measures like this really helped at the time, and then as I progressed in my recovery, I started to gain weight in my boobs, in my arms, in my legs, and suddenly I wasn't as disproportionate anymore. So yeah, this does take some time, because initially when your body's leaving this starvation mode, it's going to do everything to protect your organs and to gain weight, especially fat in that area. But if you keep going with it, you'll find that the weight redistributes and you'll start to gain muscle as well. So it might take a few months. I'm not exactly sure how long it took for me, but have faith, keep going, it does get better. The next question is, how can you eat during the meal when you're getting bloated and you're actually full but want to gain weight? The only way to do that is to push through, unfortunately. It is uncomfortable initially, especially because your stomach might have shrunk a little bit, but it gets better with practice. So I've just got back from some errands and things, and I found out that I got another question sent to me via Patreon, so I'll just be briefly answering that one as well. So the question is, Hanne, what or who helped you in your way to back to the normal life? I have problems being fixated on time and when I should eat, and thus I don't go outside with my friends because I'm probably afraid that I will upset my meal plan. That is a good question. I was very, very fixated on my times during recovery. If we ate even 5 minutes early or later than usual, I would freak the hell out. And now my eating window is just all day. Like, I don't have set meal times anymore. And that is very liberating. But how did I get here? I think being scared of going out with friends because it will upset your mealtime is actually counterproductive. What helped me most was pushing myself and going out with friends. Because by being around my friends, I picked up some of their habits and they dealt with food much better. They were very natural and very spontaneous about when they ate, what they ate. They just followed their guts. And by being around them, I managed to pick up some of those cues and then apply it to myself. So definitely, if you're in recovery, spend time with friends, because that helped me so much. And also, if you're very set on your meal times, then challenge them a little bit. Try to move back your meals or have a meal earlier, have an extra snack, things like that, because although they cause some anxiety in the short term, as always, short-term stress is what causes long-term gains. That will be it for the questions I'm answering today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any more questions, do leave them below this video. I'll try to get to them at some point or another. I'm in the midst of all my deadlines, so wish me good luck and, maybe give me a supportive thumbs up or subscribe. Anyway, I will see you all soon. Take care. Bye.